guys, I'm Reed, this is Crowland, and today we are doing another Building with Bones, and we are talking about narrative games, and what they are. Narrative games, they're the focus of the channel. Probably should have a bit of a definition for them. I wasn't going to do a video, but you'll probably hear it. I'm going to be sick tomorrow. I can definitely feel it building up, which means I'm not going to do a video for a few days because no one wants to see a man just choke on his own internal fluids in front of them. What a lovely image that is. Anyway, narrative games. Now, when we talk about RPGs, we're actually talking about a fairly broad range of experiences. And there's lots of RPG theories out there. And if you haven't read them, go and check them out. I don't know if you'll subscribe to any of them, but they're interesting theories. And it's interesting to critique role-playing games. But roughly, the sort of the subgenres include very, very combat-heavy games in which the emphasis is on creating effective combat characters who are all-round powerful and flexible and who use the rules to the most effective ways that you can. These, in other games, will be very breaking. You'll have characters who are considerably more powerful than the non-maximized characters. So you generally, when you have characters like that, you want to use them together. That's a combat-heavy campaign. There is an explorative campaign in which the emphasis is on resource management, on mapping and exploring, on finding things and being able to design a coherent image of the game world itself. Pretty fun. Pretty interesting, actually, and not much done these days, which is a shame. It's a fun RPG mode. What else have we got? I mean, you could do mysteries. Call of Cthulhu, the most prominent horror game, is at its heart a game about solving mysteries. Or you can do what I do, which is that you put the emphasis primarily on a story developing out of your game. A narrative emerges. Now, this is not to be confused with necessarily a storytelling game, and it is not an exercise in group storytelling. It's not a pitch for a movie. You play the game, any game actually, it doesn't have to be D&D. You can do this with Exalted, you could do this with COC, you could do this with Toon, you could do it with Dark Conspiracy, you could do it with Vampire Mage, whatever you wanted. But what you're primarily looking for is opportunities to create drama, to create narrative, to create story. And you do that by giving people opportunities to talk to one another, to talk to other characters, to talk to NPCs, and to meaningfully change the plot and the path of the RPG's ongoing narrative. This is not a great analogy, but imagine that the train is just going that direction. The narrative game allows you to take control and change the tracks to put the train wherever you want it to go. A very simple example, say that, you're the GM, you go, okay, this is a story about the ancient lich Bastardicus is coming back from the dead, and he is going to get revenge on the kingdom that threw him out so long ago. Alright, that's a pretty, that is a pretty standard beginning for any kind of campaign. What happens next is completely up to the players. You will not provide a storyline with that. You, as a DM, just know what's going, and then it's up to the players. And that means that anything can happen. And to me, this is the heart of the narrative RPG experience. Do you join the Lich Lord? Do you try and find a better Lich Lord to fight him? Do you take over the nation yourself? Anything that can happen, so long as it provides an interesting story. Alright. What do we got here? Now, I used to work in video game design. And video game has a very, very interesting element to it called emergent narrative. An emergent narrative is where players find their own useful mechanics to create gameplay for themselves. So I think in was it Watch Dogs, where it turned out to be like a in this game of techno future thrillers, somehow there became this really lively skating community of guys who would take their characters and just jump on skateboards within the game and play that way. That's emergent narrative. Grand Theft Auto, which of course is a great open world sandbox, and when you have online stuff, racing against each other, that might be a part of the game mechanics that's already provided. But say you are looking to hide materials and let other players find it in a game of hide and go seek, that's not particularly encouraged in the rules. There's not a lot of mechanisms for it. But if you're hiding something, or you're hiding yourself and you're shouting out to players in the world, please come and find me, it's a game of hide and seek, that's emergent narrative. And what you're doing with an RPG is creating emergent story. You're just creating situations, and then your players create an interesting, dramatic set of resolutions to those scenarios that you set up. How do you get a narrative campaign? Well, first of all, you just decide that you want one. You tell the players, look, my primary interest in this campaign, or in role-playing at the moment, is to create a cool story. And that means that as a DM, I am telling you now that I will primarily give you challenging and interesting narratives to become involved with. Killing you will not be such a big deal. Giving you stuff just to fight will not be such a big deal. Providing dungeons and locations, I'll do that, but it's not what I'm hugely interested in unless there is a cool story to be had down in the dungeon. And as players, you are expected to create characters who will engage with the world, who are interested, who are curious, who are motivated to talk to people, to do things, and to talk to each other as well, to talk to your fellow PCs, to have... You don't have to be a good guy. You can be surly or mean or cruel or evil or whatever. You all can be. But you must have a reason to... You must have a reason to create narrative. And to create narrative, you talk to each other. You have conflicting goals, which don't have to be violently conflicting. You have goals when you're in alliance with each other. You have goals where you have two different ideas about to achieve the same goal. Those things are narratively rich. When you want to interact with NPCs and monsters, I don't want to kill the bad king, I want to make the bad king a good king. That is a narrative investment. That is a narrative RPG. A combat-heavy RPG is that you realize that the good king is actually a level 13 fighter and will kick your asses, so you need to use careful tactics. A comedy game is that you realize that the king needs a pie in the face. A mystery game is that you need to solve the mystery of who the king really, really is. But a narrative game is that you just want to become involved with him and create a fiction with him, so that when you... And this is the thing, is the narrative games happen in the rearview mirror, so that when you are telling the story to each other and to the DM, it will make some sense. It will have beats. It will have emotions. You will feel towards those characters. That's a narrative game as well. You invest in the people and the places and the things emotionally. You invest in your character. And if you do that, if you care about your character and the other characters at the table, narrative games tend to natively emerge. So the most important thing that you can do as a DM is to tell your player characters, I want you to do such and such. I want you to create characters that are invested in each other's lives, that are invested in the campaign world, that they have needs and wants. And your primary goal as players is to make characters who are interesting and likable, relatable, and who will contribute to the overall experience of the RPG. That's the narrative game that we're talking about. So what that means is that in your campaign, you are primarily going to be looking for talking over action, that's not necessarily correct, but for interaction over just action. You are looking for ways to encounter monsters and players and each other's characters and the NPCs, to create drama out of that. That's what you're going to want to see happen most of all. You don't want to kill that spoiled noble. You want to humiliate the spoiled noble. And that will create a drama where you and the spoiled noble have conflict with each other. That's not just violent conflicts. That's important as well. So that he will try and embarrass you. He will be embarrassed by you. You will shame him in the eyes of his father. He will have you kicked out of the Guild of Adventurers. Drama, stories, things that escalate, things that have conflicts, that have resolutions. Not necessarily violent resolutions. These are narrative games. Always, always, always. Drama, drama, drama. Narrative, narrative, narrative. Story, story, story. That's what you're after. And one of the ways that you do that is that not only have you got those good characters that you've made up, you'll also be okay with failing. That's important. You will be okay if sometimes your player characters or your PC does not get what they want, because sometimes that is really narratively exciting. One of my all-time favorite comics is Suicide Squad. Jordan Ostrander, Suicide Squad. And there's a character called Raven. Yeah, he's cool. And he's a thuggy cultist. And he's a strangler. And he's sworn to take on this Doctor Doom style terrorist leader called Cobra. And it's a religious duty, and he just hates this Cobra bastard so much on top of having the duty. And he's, for months and months we're getting ready for the big showdown. He finally gets a hold of Cobra. Cobra just murders him. Cobra kills him. It's amazing. Not because it's great that this cool character dies. It's great because the drama is so intense and you're not expecting it. It's a real gut punch moment. Luke Skywalker going to meet Darth Vader in the first time in the second film. What happens there? He's a knight. He's pure of heart. He's ready to go. He's going to defeat that evil space wizard. Oh, I'll sort you out. And of course, he gets his ass kicked from one end of the galaxy to the other. Has a discussion about his heritage, which doesn't go very well, and ends up a hand shorter. It's a great dramatic moment, but it is undoubtedly a fail for the second level paladin, Luke Skywalker. He absolutely got his ass kicked. And it's a great narrative. And sometimes you've got to be willing to lose. Sometimes you've got to be willing to even die for a great dramatic moment. To do this, you have to trust the DM. You have to trust the DM to look after you, to not get you killed in some back alley scuffle, to provide you with a tactical challenge that you're not ready for. You have to trust the DM to give you NPCs that you will want to interact with and who you will find are interesting to fail in front of. And to also, your DM should give your PC plenty of stuff to act off against. You have to trust the DM, and the DM has to trust you. And trusting you means giving you cool stuff to do, interesting characters to meet, and you won't abuse them. You won't be just out for the money. You won't be doing horrible stuff to these NPCs. You won't be looking to break the mood of the game. You won't be looking to bring in out-of-game knowledge or ruin the aesthetics or whatever. You will be making an effort, and the DM will be making an effort. And together, the two of you, primarily focused on what's a good story. What's the most dramatic thing that can happen in this scenario? That's how you make narrative games, and that's how strong narratives emerge. Partnerships. Alright, what else have we got? Now, that doesn't mean blind loyalty. It doesn't mean allow yourself to be railroaded. If you want the storyline to go one way and you think that the DM is going another, you are encouraged to change the narrative. And if you're the DM, this is important as well. You must not be precious about the narrative. We'll get into that more in just a second. But primarily as a player, it's in your hands. You are going to have to come up with ideas for your character, to come up with unique ways to interact with NPCs. And with PCs as well. You're going to have to be prepared to try and make cool and dramatic and interesting things happen. Alright. DMs. I have in my hand the first original Game of Thrones novel, right? I thought it was signed. I've got a signed copy somewhere. Anyway, I'm going to read out the back to you in a second, but I want to just talk for right now about you must abandon the notion that you are writing a novel. You must abandon the notion that you are telling a story. You are not telling a story. This is not the place to bring in characters who you then want to write, 500-page fantasy novels about. This is not the place for you to indulge in your personal fetishes in storytelling. Although, obviously, you have to put something personal in. It's just that you can't and shouldn't override the players. For example, if you're just really, really wanting to do like a super cool dungeon punk game and they're all just wanting to do a medieval fantasy, just go with them. But the thing is that you're not specifically telling the story. You're letting the story emerge from any kind of regular gameplay. And you can do it. That's what I'm talking about. A dungeon crawl can be narrative. An exploration can be a narrative. It's all about just how you treat those adventures. But to come back to the original point that you are not telling a story, what you are actually doing is just giving these guys the tools to create their own stories, and you are acting as a referee. You are acting as a guide. You are acting as a Greek chorus. You are the director. You move the camera. You decide who's on when and what's on first and what's important at that moment in time and who the extras are, but they're the script writers. Now, the reason that I bring up the book is that here's what I think the DM primarily is supposed to be doing. You are primarily giving them the back cover of the book, and you are then letting them write the story. Here's Game of Thrones. I'm assuming that you've seen Game of Thrones. If you haven't, okay. All right, in the Game of Thrones, you win or die. As Warden of the North, Lord Eddard Stark counts it as a curse when King Robert bestows on him the office of Hand. His honour weighs him down at court, where a true man does what he will, not what he must, and a dead enemy is a thing of beauty. The old gods have no power in the south. Stark's family is split, and there is treachery at court. Worse, a vengeance-mad boy has grown to maturity in exile in the free cities beyond the sea. Heir of the mad Dragon King, disposed by Robert, he claims the Iron Throne. Alright, there you go. So let's translate that to D&D terms. One of the players is going to play the Stark dude. Probably the rest of the players will be his court. Maybe one or two of the players will be the weird southern court that he's going to go to. Now, if you've seen the books, you know what I'm saying, you know how it all plays out. And you also know that there's loads and loads of stuff that is introduced in the campaign that is not there in the back of the book. That's narrative gameplay. Say that you are... one of your characters is Jon Snow, the bastard son. And he has decided that in his backstory, he wants to go and join the Rangers because there's something beyond the wall. There's something frightening beyond the wall. And the DM hasn't thought about that. The DM has not thought for 1 second that there might be adventures up north. He's all about this cool political drama that's about to unfold. And the chick who's playing Stark, or the chick who's playing Snow, is like, no. This is, I really do think that it's great if I am aware of a threat that other people are not. I would like that dramatic hook. So the DM goes, okay, lady, Jon Snow is involved with the White Walkers who live in the snow, the others. All right, that sounds good. And then, by the end of the first book, they're beginning to come on to the screen. And the plot that he set in motion of the Dragon Queen and the Mad Boy King coming back over the sea, that's beginning to heat up as well. But here's the thing, is that kind of gets left by the wayside. So even though it's in the back of the book, it's probably not going to pay off for another 7 novels. So yeah, they've got problems, those books. But that's ultimately what you're doing. Ultimately what you're doing is setting yourself up all these plots, all these notions, all these potential storylines, and then you are giving them to the players and you are letting the players contribute back. Now, some of you are going, but Christian, I'm there to play an RPG. I don't want to be in as this kind of kumbaya holding hands sing along. I'm there to play a game. I'm not there to just make stuff up. And of course, that's pretty valid. I actually would never suggest that you just sort of freeform it completely with no game elements, because the game elements are exciting and the game elements are fun and the game elements are interesting, and randomness means that no one controls the game completely. You can always roll a 1, you can always roll a 20, you can always somehow survive the enemy's killing blows, you can always fail the save. Things are out of the hands of anyone in the game. And there are games like Fate, which actually do have mechanical abilities to have that sort of level of fine control over the game's narrative if you want it. I think they're great, but we're not talking about them right now. Maybe another time, because the more storytelling RPGs are really interesting to me. But this is D&D channel, so keep them. Keep the random elements. Keep the ability to lose. Keep the ability for your players to also win above all odds. Everyone loves that feeling when you take down that boss who you didn't think that you could take down. When you have that last stand and somehow, oh wow, we won, 300. This is Sparta. That's exciting. I find that one of the ways to really actually make sure that the narrative game comes very, very sharply into focus is to just signal that you can die now, players. This is a serious part of the campaign. I've often thought about formalizing this process, but how it usually works is that I tend to say, all right, guys, it's serious now. We're into a big fight. And that's kind of the cue to the players to take this all a bit more seriously, to be prepared to die. And if you're prepared to die, if your players know, okay, game rules are on now, I very well might lose my player, they will change the way that they will play, they will be more attentive, and the drama becomes really, really into sharp focus, because suddenly there's a chance that you're going to lose it all, and you will play your character a little bit differently, and you will take care of each other's characters with more attention and care than you normally would. Which is not to say that you shouldn't fudge the roles or anything like that. GMs should never cheat. Unless they really should, because this is kind of like the what separates a narrative game from a more regular game. And if you reject this, if you say, no, I don't like this, I understand. I really, really do. And I do vacillate a little bit on this. I do go back and forth a little bit on this. But generally speaking, is that what does separate a narrative game from a regular game is that the GM's allegiance is primarily not to the dice, not to fairness, not to the mechanics, not to the players, not to their own desire to win. The DM's loyalty is to the game and to the narrative that the game provides. And if your hero is about to fail a saving throw and fall off a bridge 2 rooms before he finds the man who destroyed his father, fudge it. Just cheat. Just do it. Also, in the same way that, don't let your big bad... This is a classic example of a narrative game. We've all had this as DMs, is that you get the great big bad guy and she's all like, ha ha ha, my vampire goddess is coming, soon the sun will... And then some bastard just goes like, I shoot her in the face with a crossbow. And the villain monologue is interrupted, and the information that you really, really wanted to reveal in the villain monologue is not going to come to the players. And all you've really done is give a player, not a character, a cheap sense of control over the narrative and a haha, I spoiled your NPC. I don't like that. A narrative game, it shouldn't happen in the first place. A player should agree not to do stuff like that. unless it's kind of like a hand shot first moment. But even then, you have to agree to that sort of behavior, and as a reward, as a trade-off, a DM will take care of the characters a little bit, not always. And also, you can still lose even if you don't necessarily die. And I think that that is the loyalties of a narrative game. And the benefits of it is that it's kind of like jazz, is that you do get a cool story that only the 5 or the 6 or whatever of you get to enjoy, and you can write it up if you like. You can turn it into a book. Raymond Feist did. It worked out pretty good for him. But the true pure story is something that exists only in that time and that space. It is impermanent, and it is for an audience and a participation of just that group. And I think that that can be a really, really exciting and interesting and fun experience for people who like fiction. You are the part of the audience, you are a part of the ensemble, and you are part of this narrative that ultimately has existed by you, for you, as a group. And I think that's really, really exciting. So, what do we get? Make ensemble characters, make curious characters. As a DM, make an exciting world with lots and lots for players to actually do. Really, really work at it. Make lists of these are plot hooks for all the different PCs. These are plot hooks for all the different NPCs. Take care of your players and let your players take care of the world. And if everybody commits to this style of play, I think that you will have really rewarding characters. You will have really, really rewarding interactions between players and their PCs alike. You will have some great opportunities to ham it up as a DM, which is always fun. And you will have a really, really fulfilling fantasy narrative that only you guys really ever felt. All right. Like I said, I'm getting very, very sick. I can actually feel myself getting sicker throughout this video. I'm going to bail. I hope that was useful. Like and share and subscribe and put on the comments. I think we should have a Facebook group by now. Crowland Publishing. Anyway. Gross. Alright. Excuse me. I'll see you later.